Welcome again to A Word for Wednesday. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes to be with us. As you may remember, this is the third part in a three-part series of the words of Christ quoted by the Apostle Paul in the book of Acts. Jesus said, "It is more blessed to give than it is to receive." What a contrary opinion to most of our world. Give me, give me, give me. But Jesus said, I'd rather give than receive. And it's better. It's blessed. It's more fun. And it is. Once we understand that God has a design for our finance, and then as we are disciplined in finance, we will discover what Jesus said is true. There is delight in finance. There's delight in giving. It's better to give than it is to receive. That's the delight of it. It's fun to give. Hey, I've been on the receiving end, and I thank God for people who have sown into our ministry and into our family. It takes money to survive, but thank God I'm not always on the receiving end. I mean, I don't want to have ingratitude about it. I'm thankful for it. Thankful to God, thankful to people, thankful to friends, ministries, businesses. But I am so thankful that I'm not always on the receiving end. It is so much joy to be on the giving side. It's better, Jesus said. It's blessed. It's better, it's joyful, it's cheerful, it's fun, it's delightful. It's better to give than it is to receive. There is delight in giving. Please stay with me just a moment. I have a lot of ground to cover. I'm hoping to keep this to my normal time if I can. Now, the giving I'm talking about is not tithing. Okay? Don't get hung up on tithing. That's not the epitome of giving. Tithing is what we give God off the top. It's what God says, yeah, I want that part. He takes 1/10 of our increase, of our income, and he leaves us 90%. That's a pretty good deal. Here's what used to happen to us before Kelly and I knew anything about this. We'd spend all our money. We'd get down to, oh boy, I got to put $5 in. And I got $10 left. Oh God, I need you to stretch this $10 all week long. It'd be better, and we found this out, to give God his portion at the beginning. I get my check. We give God his portion. And then, God, bless this 90% that you allowed me to keep. Hey, 90% goes a lot farther than those little bitty scraps that I was ending up with before. So we give God 10%. We tithe of our land, or whether the seed of the land or the fruit of the tree. It's the Lord's, the Bible said. It's holy unto the Lord. It's really a debt that we owe. So it's until we've given that 10th, we're not really giving at all. We're not making an offering to the Lord. So when you acknowledge God's ownership and his authority, you'll find it pretty easy to give that 10%. And you'll always find it easy to give beyond that. If you control your debt and your spending, you'll find it easy to give the tithe and beyond that. And you can turn that around too. If you discipline yourself to give, you'll find it easier to control your debts and your spending. That's the way Kelly and I first approached this. We couldn't control our debt and spending, so we said, okay, we're going to give first. And when we decided to give first, and we disciplined ourselves to give, it was so much easier to have money to pay our debts and for our spending, because God has more to bless. I was asking him to bless the scraps at the end, but when I started asking him to bless this 90% at the beginning, it was amazing what he did. And true Christians who have learned the design for God's finance and accepted his authority and we're disciplined in debt and spending in all areas of finance, you'll find all of them are delightful givers. Very often we have hamstrung ourselves with so many out of control things that we find it hard to give. But let me tell you my heart. If we would control spending and eliminate unnecessary debt, we would have the money, as I mentioned last week, to take care of all facets of ministry. Missions would never suffer. Churches would never have to resort to endless fundraisers to put an addition on their church. And there's nothing wrong with fundraisers, but it's just endless fundraisers. If we were disciplined, we'd have money to give. Even the poorest of us would have money to give. If your local church, my local church, would exercise these disciplines, there'd be no telling what we could accomplish with the money that we had left. We must discipline ourselves to give. Early in our evangelistic time, over these last 18 plus years, we preached at a church, and that pastor, just in conversation, told me that they were always struggling as a church. And he felt the Lord challenge him, give your tithe and give a second 10%. He felt the Lord challenge him. So he got up and shared that with his congregation and said, why don't you think about that? I challenge you to try that. It wasn't mandatory. Nobody was going to heaven or hell if they didn't do it. It wasn't a brownie point situation. It was just, hey, we're constantly struggling. Let's up our giving and our cheerfulness about it and see what happens. Now, many families just ignored it, but some families, especially young families who couldn't afford it, decided to do it. And over a period of years, it was amazing how that they always had good jobs, and they got better jobs, and they got really good deal on this old house that needed to be fixed up, and now their family had a home, and they bought cars that ran for years and years and years when it was ready for the junkyard when they bought it. But they loved that car because they felt like it was a blessing from God. And that pastor told me that story just in passing. So I told my wife that story in our trailer that night, our old fifth wheel that we were driving. I said, let's do that. We tithed faithfully and had for many years. And then we gave as we saw opportunity and felt led, had opportunity to do it. I said, let's tithe. Let's set aside a second 10% of every revival offering, and let's put that in somebody else's ministry. And then let's give on top of that. And so we purposed to do that. It didn't really look very easy, but we've been doing that for over 18 years. A second 10% has went into somebody else's ministry. It didn't, later when we started going to Africa, it didn't buy plane tickets for us. No, it wasn't us. It wasn't spent on us. That second 10% went to build a church, or to buy an evangelist diesel or gas, or to help an evangelist buy another trailer, or fix his trailer, or fix his truck, or to help a church build a building. We purposed, we're going to tithe, then that second 10% is going to go into somebody else's ministry. So over a period of 18 years, thousands and thousands of dollars went somewhere else besides our pocket. Then we gave on top of that, and we have been so joyous in that giving. Now, I'm not going to tell you that every time it was the easiest thing to do. It was like, okay, put a pencil to this. This is not going to work. But no, we committed to it, and we're going to do it, and it worked. Now, in the meantime, we gave additional things. We bought PA equipment for churches, and that's something we did early on. We'd see a church that needed PA equipment, a little pioneer church. Kelly and I have always been drawn to pioneer churches. We've preached lots of revivals and put that offering right back into their church and bought PA equipment or helped the church some way. And we'd spend a few $1,000s all over the country here and there buying speakers that I really wanted to have for myself. And God not only gave me speakers like that, but gave me better speakers. Many, many, many thousands of dollars of high quality equipment. I mean, the fact is, this little family travels around, sets up in churches of 30 people to 100 people, and sometimes a little bigger, but mostly small churches, and sets up better equipment than a lot of big time gospel groups use. And that came to me from others, sometimes as gift, sometimes at deep discount. And I believe it's because we cheerfully gave to others. During the pandemic last year, all the time, the weeks that were canceled, the time we went off work, we never missed a meal unless we were fasting. The many weeks we have been off through this sickness this year, we haven't missed a meal unless we were fasting or didn't want to eat and our bills are paid. Listen, it's a joy to give. And as Brother John Gabrick taught me, God will never let you be in debt to Him. Or no, God will never be in debt to you. Sorry about that. My brain had a fuzzy moment there. God will not allow Himself to be in debt to you. And so you give and you give and you give to God's kingdom, and God's going to find a way to pay it back. It's not always money. No, I've had cars that kept on running for years after they should have died. I've had other tools that just kept right on going and right on going and right on going. And I've had health and strength that I didn't deserve. And my family's had health and strength, and we still do. God has blessed and given. Listen, God will not allow Himself to be in debt to you. You give to God, God will give it back some way. Especially when that giving is joyous. The delight in giving. Happy is the man that loves to give. There is pleasure in the act of giving. I remember the very first time someone gave me a $100 bill with no strings attached. Just as an evangelist, I was preaching in a church, and a visiting pastor walked up after church outside in the sunshine, shook my hand with a folded up $100 bill in it. The first time this guy had ever seen me. First time he'd ever seen me. He put a $100 bill in my hand. I'll never forget that. I was blown away. $100 was a half to a third of a whole week's revival wages at that time. Most time a half. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for me. And I'm sure we needed it. But I also, and that was joyous. It was humbling. But I'm sure Kelly and I cried some tears of joy when we got back to wherever we were staying. But I remember the multiple times I've been able to fold up a $100 bill and slip it to somebody. No, I don't say that in a boastful manner. No. I want to tell you, I just want to tell you, those times brought me as much or way more joy as it did to receive it. Thank God for every gift we receive, but thank God for every gift we are able to give. Now, you can judge my motive right here, but God is the one who looks at the pureness of the motive. Without pure motives, that money going to do that recipient good, but it's not going to do us any good when we give it with a motive of, I'm getting it back, or I'm getting up on God. That's not the motive. They that give sparingly, they receive, they reap sparingly. They would give or sow bountifully, they reap or receive bountifully. But then it says, let every man give according as he purposes in his heart. So if I'm giving that for show, that's not in my heart. If I'm giving that because I think, oh boy, that'll get me some points, that's not my heart. My heart needs to be, I love to help that person. I love to give. It is delightful. Don't give grudgingly, he said, or just out of necessity. For God loveth a cheerful giver. Cheerful there in the original language is prompt, willing, merry, hilarious. I love that. God loves a giver that's prompt, that's willing, that's merry, and even hilarious. God loves a giver that delights in giving. Praise God. And not only has the Lord blessed us for giving, but we have so much joy in our giving. Kelly and I cannot wait sometimes for opportunities to find someone to bless. And we don't always get it right, I'm sure. I'm sure we miss opportunities that God was showing us, and well, we missed it. And probably I've been the recipient of that, maybe. Maybe somebody gave something to me they should have gave to somebody else, or maybe they gave to somebody else when God intended them to give to me. That's all fine. But I don't want to miss that. But I'm sure sometimes I give to the wrong place, or God forbid, though, that I would shut up my bowels of compassion and not give. Let that never be the case. Let us as Christians always be looking for a way to bless somebody. If it's nothing more than shoveling off the neighbor's sidewalk or their porch, or mowing their grass, or helping them fix their car, or help pull somebody out of the ditch. I've stopped alongside the road, helped an older couple one time. They had a flat tire on a fifth wheel. They were hysterical. They had no way to fix it. No jack. So I got some boards out of their RV and pulled the other wheel up on the boards, and that left the flat, blown out tire hanging. They're like, we never thought about that. 15 minutes. I had the spare on, had it aired up, and going down the road. Boy, I was glad to do that. I went and got in my car, had a great big old rock chip in the windshield. Somebody went by while I was parked there, and their tire threw up a rock or something. Oh, no good deed goes unpunished. But did that diminish my joy? No. No, I don't like to replace a windshield. But it didn't diminish my joy. That older couple was so thankful. They were on the last leg of their trip home, and they have this blowout. And nobody's stopping. Some stranger stops that they can trust. It's not going to hold them up. In fact, when they held out a wad of money to hand to me, I said, please, no. I've been the recipient of this so many times. I'm not taking your money. Take it down the road and buy you some dinner. Oh, what a blessed joy it is to give. And you've been there. We've been the recipients, and we've been the givers. It is more blessed to give than to receive. Are you ready to start living by giving? Understanding God's design for finance, exercising discipline in finance, and living in the delight of finance. Well, I hope this has been productive. I've certainly had a good time with it. Probably when I go back over it, I'll think of 100 things I should have said, and probably a few things it would have been better off if I hadn't said. Please, don't critique me too much. I'll do that myself. But I want to be a giver because God has given so much to us. I should have been in hell, but I'm on my way to heaven because God gave His Son in my place, gave him to me. I've accepted that gift. I've repented of my sins. And I'm going to heaven by God's grace. So thank you for joining us today and these last 3 weeks for a word from Wednesday. I hope you'll join us again next time. May God bless you, my dear friends.